I've been trying for quite a while now to figure out just what Gavan Infinity is going to center on. What the core elements of this story are really going to be about. What the tangible words, phrases, and characters are actually going to manifest as. You see, I tried this with Astrasia. Remember that? I was trying to guess with all the hints coming out about what the Sentai was going to be until the news broke, a bit unexpectedly, that Sentai was going to end after 50 years. Of course, that threw my theory completely to the wind. Now I've been trying to figure out just what Gavan Infinity is all about now. Now, the issue that I have with it is that it's been very mysterious about just what the Records of Extraordinary Dimensions means. For you and me, a dimension on the sci-fi level means a different universe, okay? Now, originally, we were under the idea that this was going to be called Universe Heroes, okay? This was thanks to that Thailand translation and some other stuff that had come out in previous months. Universe Heroes is still a bit, up the air. It might not be the actual name for this project. R.E.D could be the entire franchise. I'm really not sure. We won't know until Christmas for sure. But for now, I'm just going to assume that Universe Heroes was a mistranslation. So, what we're then left with is that Gavan Infinity means something infinite, right? And for a while, I was trying to figure out just what exactly that would mean, that would entail of infinity on the Gavan level. Now, space, being space, is infinite, right? That's kind of the idea of space, is that it goes on forever. The universe is ever expanding, good or for bad. It's just endless out there, right? Records of extraordinary dimensions then could possibly mean that other Gavans from other universes are meeting up somewhere. However, this begs the question then of what is super space, right? Super space, of course, sounds very like super samurai, super ninja steel, super whatever. It sounds very tacked on, sort of like, we're doing things that are super now. But I had to really think it through. So hyperspace is a, classically recognized speed that you travel at. Despite what Han Solo insists about parsecs, hyperspace is usually referring to speed. So Space Sheriff Gavan Infinity implies he goes very fast. However, Super Space Sheriff Gavan Infinity implies there's something super about space, because Infinity is attached to Gavan. That's the delineator of Gavan, that he is infinity, infinite in this one. So that leaves us to wonder what super space, because that is divorced from the Gavan Infinity part of the name. It's not split off, as in it's like a colon there, but in the way that you read that, Super Space Sheriff is a delineator, is a rank. Then a name is Gavan Infinity. And Infinity could be a qualifier, okay, in the title. So what you're looking at here is a suggestion that superspace is the realm where all the universes exist together. Think about it. If you're going to have a multiverse, you've got to have a place to put that multiverse, right? In DC Comics, they had different ways of doing it. In Marvel Comics, they had different ways of doing it too. However, the way that this actually comes to be in this Gavan Infinity setting is that I believe our R.E.D protagonist, who is presumably the infinite part of Gavan Infinity, if you will, the infinite part of it, this guy comes from super space, meaning he is part of a civilization that either monitors the multiverse or is, aware of it more so than these other places. Now, Gavan Blue and Gavan Gold that we see in the previews here, they are obviously coming from different universes. When you take a look at the footage where they're showing them off, their settings are very different from each other in architecture, lighting, and in the color tone of what it's supposed to broadcast to you. So Gavan Blue is shown in a very dark and ominous, cold lighting. There's fog moving around him, suggesting that this is a cold person, a cold environment. So he comes from a world that's, masked in shadow, more Batman than Superman, if you will. Similarly, Gavan Gold is shown in relationship to fire. She is shown in relationship to sunrise. She is shown in relationship to a cityscape. So it's my belief that she comes from a more metropolis-like, hopeful, high-trust sort of environment where heroes are heroes to their core, whereas Gavan Blue could come from a place where justice is served very cold and not always by a hero. And what I mean by that is like the Punisher, for instance, right? So the Punisher is an anti-hero. He's able to accomplish justice, but it's not the justice that Batman does because Batman's not supposed to kill. He's not supposed to. That's what's supposed to separate him from the criminals he beats the, daylights out of. Nightlights, I don't know. Anyway, the Punisher puts an end to their criminal activities, whereas Batman gives them infinite redos to figure it out and do it the right way. Unlike Gavan Gold and unlike Gavan Blue, Gavan Red, presumably Gavan Infinity, is not shown in relationship to architecture, but rather shown in relationship to what appears to be strands of light, beams of light, and sometimes this is associated with the progression of time, sometimes the progression of energy from a beginning point to an end point. And so this is suggesting that he comes from an artificial environment, whereas the other two are interacting with concrete architecture, not like concrete as in like, the building material, but like real, tangible architecture. Now, in the preview material, we saw these energy projections that make it look like Gavan is going to be using animal-like attacks. Now, this is unusual for the Gavan character, as Gavan's typically associated with the high-tech Space Sheriff motif, irregardless of the giant mechanical dragon, right? Okay, it's not really what I'm trying to drive at here, the giant mechanical dragon. I'm trying to drive at the fact that Gavan usually doesn't have, like, Gal Ranger attacks. It doesn't usually have attacks that would be associated with like Geki Ranger. These kinds of things are usually relegated for characters that have a visual animal motif to them, a visual animal theming to their story. This appears to be taking a lot of inspiration from DC Comics' Crisis on Infinite Earths. It appears to be some type of contact between these universes. It could be the very first time that these universes are having any acknowledgement of each other. And so Gavan Red isn't like a decade character going around and, visiting places that are known. He's instead exploring these new realms as like a adventurer or scientist or some type of soldier who is sent through an experimental program from the super space, if you will, to travel among the multiverses of the, Gavan setting. And this is how he meets Gavan Gold and Gavan Blue, who become either rivals or some type of entwined allies, be they, consenting to that or sort of drug along, as is sometimes the case with Japanese productions, where the hero is just so magnetic he has to keep around his foil and he has to keep around his heart, because otherwise they are sort of loose cannons without his guidance. It could be that sort of dynamic in that Gavan Infinity is more engaged with the idea of order and bringing order to the chaos of the multiverse, and that's where Gavan Blue and Gavan Gold are sort of representative of that chaos being brought into order. And that would be an interesting idea, right? These characters that have absolutely nothing to do with each other coming together and learning how to be a unit to benefit the super space multiverse dimension of dimensions? Dimension of dimensions? I'm not really sure what to call it. Super space makes more sense to me as like the qualifier for that. I think scientists in our universe, like real world, I think they refer to it as the bulk. They call it the bulk when they refer to multiverse theory. It's not really helpful. It doesn't really clarify it. So super space is more of a fun way to communicate to kids what the multiverse containment area is. I don't know what else you'd call it. Just like Astrasia, this is all theory. I have absolutely no insider source, nothing to tell me one way or another. Your idea about this is just as valid as mine. And as always, guys, you'll have to let me know down in the comments below, and good luck out there.